from a fourth-generation family farm, as Ferd had mentioned, in South Dakota, and one of the things I think it's always important to understand where someone stands, you need to know where they stood. And so, a little bit about our farm, and we grew up, we had cattle, hogs, chickens, 2 Guernsey dairy cows called Peanut Butter and Jelly that we drank milk out of every morning. Thank God Dad milked them instead of us. And we did have sheep for about a year and a half. Long story, but something to do with my uncle staying at Humble Bar too late one night, and it's a long story that way, but it didn't work out too well. But we had CRP ground. We planted 20 acres of trees. We're active in Pheasants Forever and promotion of wildlife conservation and hunting opportunities. But we also grow Roundup Ready soybeans, GMO Ready soybeans for local markets that are bagged and sold to a local processor there. We use grid soil sampling and grid soil fertilizer applications. We do tiling and manage the water on our property in an efficient manner. And all of that is going to lead up to kind of the theme that I'm talking about here. The second point I want to make is really one that Secretary Vilsack had mentioned, and you've heard mentioned here earlier today, the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food campaign by the USDA. I think it is absolutely a wonderful idea. Because being here in this room with you, and as well as the people back out in South Dakota, the passion for beginning farmers and the innovation and the energy that's there is truly infectious. And I'm going to go back to South Dakota tomorrow morning, really revived, having been here and spent time with all of you over the past 2 days. Because the more ways we can connect society to the soil, the better off agriculture is going to be in the long run. And I truly believe that as the Secretary of Agriculture. And I think maybe Wendell Berry, to paraphrase him, kind of sums up that comment the best, in that if you know your farmer and know your food, you also know that rain on a Saturday is something other than spoiling your golf game. It's important for what you're growing and what you're trying to do. So how do we get this connection between beginning farmers and ranchers and their food and their consumers? I'm going to tell you 5 things from my point of view as the State Secretary of Agriculture, but there's 2 overarching principles that I think you need to cement in place to begin with in order to be successful. First off, I know John Fisk, are you still here? Maybe not. From Winrock, and he mentioned that earlier today, and I think he summed it up very well. It's the issue of diversity. It's the issue of openness and acceptability as we take a look at who are going to be our next generation of beginning farmers and ranchers. We need to welcome everyone into agriculture. And this space is not mutually exclusive. Okay? I think that's one of the fundamental principles that we all need to agree on, or we're not going to be able to move forward. The second point is really one of a positive attitude. And, if we get caught in the trap of disparaging one type of agriculture or one sector of agriculture, it's really going to get us nowhere. And all we end up doing when we shoot at each other is ruin the reputation of agriculture in general with the consumers that are out there. 98% of the people in the United States that are not directly involved in agriculture. Folks, blowing out someone else's candle is not going to make yours burn brighter. That's an old saying that my mother told me, and I think it's pertinent today as we try to have this big tent concept and move forward with how we're going to define what beginning agriculture is, whether you're in an urban area or whether you're in a very rural area. Positive agendas last, and they achieve lasting results. Negative agendas burn brightly, burn briefly, and burn relationships. And we can't afford to do that in agriculture. So, what are the 5 points that I think I would try to summarize on what I heard here and what I've tried to do as Secretary of Agriculture in South Dakota? Number 1, this is about money. This is about credit. This is about trying to get someone else's money for a time being in order for us to build a business. Whether that's federal money or tax money or grant money or the depositor's money in a bank. It's really about that at the bottom line. And Personally, I'm here in front of you today as a beneficiary of the USDA's Beginning Farmer and Rancher loan program. I got a low-interest subsidized loan through our local, at that time, ASCS office that enabled me to buy my first quarter of ground and get that rough stake I needed to get involved in agriculture. And I'm thankful to the USDA for that, and I'm thankful for the public policy that put that in place. I think the key thing to remember, though, when we're talking about credit, we've heard it here before already, is we need to make sure that these tools stay current and stay relevant and stay workable, whether it's for me in rural South Dakota or somebody in an urban environment. Second, you've probably all heard of the KISS principle, K-I-S-S. What's it mean?
Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid. Absolutely. Before I was Secretary of Agriculture, I had the opportunity to run the Governor's Office of Economic Development in South Dakota. And one of the things I did, we went in and took this. We had our loan programs for businesses and startup businesses, and folks, it looked like a Christmas tree festooned with boutique programs, very narrowly tailored for whatever whim a legislator had in a given year. And I went in and we repealed all of them and rolled everything into one straightforward loan program. As Secretary of Agriculture, I've directed my legal counsel to go through on every contract that we have, whether with volunteer fire departments or whatever we're doing, get rid of the legalese, shorten this up, clean it up, make it easy, simple, quick, and understandable for the people and the taxpayers we're trying to do business with. You've heard that issue raised here before, and I think it's important that federal, state, and local people and regulators have that in mind. Okay, how many of you have heard of buy fresh, buy local?
Never heard of it.
should be a number of hands going up. And so I'm going to make the point here that that also applies. Don't overlook state programs. Don't overlook local programs and ideas. There are a lot of fresh local ideas that are innovative. You know, that's what the states do. We're the incubators of that innovation within democracy. And the cutting-edge things that happen at the state level often then end up getting into national policy. So go to your local bank. Go to your local, you know, if it's the Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, whoever you're working with, find those programs, try and get those deployed. Point four, don't reinvent the wheel. I know Professor Hamilton mentioned that on a couple of things earlier about kitchens. We've got 4-H programs, we've got FFA programs, we've got land-grant colleges in the extension system that are out there. Don't reinvent the wheel, but if you think we need to maybe make some course corrections, let's just turn that wheel. Let's steer that wheel and do the education and information campaign in order to make those programs relevant. They're struggling for budget, and they got quite a load on their shoulders, but I also think that they're looking for a way to be relevant, and beginning farmers is certainly an area that can help it. Number 5, you've also heard, and it's very true, state or county local regulatory policy, and more importantly, the regulatory approach can have a real impact on success or failure or the friction or problems you have getting started. You know, public servants have to try and balance a lot of diverse interests. And when you have an urban farmer's market crop up, sometimes you have a regulator trying to put that round peg in a square hole. And so we need to update those regulations. I'm proud to say we just passed some laws in South Dakota with bipartisan support, with farmers markets to try and make things better and more efficient so the Department of Health is able to understand this new industry. I'm proud of that. We're just passing agritourism legislation that just came out of the House, 11-zip out of the House Ag Committee yesterday. But almost more importantly is the attitude that your county or me as your Secretary of Agriculture are going to take on how we deal with people. You know, one of my head regulators is a decorated Vietnam veteran. He's got a Silver Star for Valor, Purple Heart, saved a bunch of his men. He's this guy that they would lower down into the spider hole, Vietcong spider hole by the ankles with a flashlight and a pistol. This guy ain't afraid of controversy, all right? And he's one of my regulators. And so I am trying to change the culture of our regulatory approach in the South Dakota Department of Agriculture from, or to, yes, if, instead of no, because. And that is a huge difference on how we approach the taxpayers, how we approach new innovative thoughts out there on how do we try to bring people into compliance and change things that we feel are important. And Ferd's given me the high sign, but I would end with one thing. This is very personal for me. I'm a fourth-generation family farmer. My middle son is 16 years old, and he also wants to be a farmer. He works on the farm in the summers. He's getting paid in cattle, and he's worked with his cousin with a vegetable garden. They're taking the vegetables into town and selling them to make a little money. And I was encouraging him to he took his paycheck from custom combining and selling a calf. And I said, well, you need to go and buy another bred heifer, and he promptly went and bought a snowmobile. So, with that, thank you for your time.